meeting, since it's an action item and this is a study session. Discussion, you can say what you want, but I really don't want to do it.
Okay, this is a time sensitive issue due to the fact they're running out of supplies as fast as they can. And I apologize, I did talk with the Administrator Michelle about it, and I was hoping to do it next week. But they're running out of supplies as fast as they can try and get some money. If you wish, I can see if they can hold it, but they've been pushing them out.
Well, the reason I don't want to do that on this meeting is because, well, as I stated earlier, all of these action items need to stick in a regular session.
Yeah, and this is
It's up to you guys. What do you want to do? My attitude is we need to stick them on the regular meetings so the public can be aware of when these things happen.
I agree with that protocol.
I'm okay with it.
All right, so then we'll remove number 3. Is there anything else that we need to add or change to the agenda?
Can I just make a quick comment? Ron, would you please call him as soon as you leave and ask if they'll hold one?
Oh, yeah, I've been in contact with him for a week. He's been keeping me up to date with what's being told.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
All right, any other discussion? I'll make a motion that we accept the agenda with the removing number 3.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Who said aye? Okay, John, thank you.
I agree. I mean, yeah.
All right, very good. We're set. We'll pick it up on next Thursday. It'll be fine. Joint meeting with Princeton Public Utilities. All right, who wants to start?
Mayor, if I may.
Actually, I'm sorry, just for a logistical purpose, we should approve our agenda
Oh,
at
yes.
the same time, just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, so let me, I have to pull mine up. Hold on a second. Forgive me, I forgot about doing this in 2 parts.
Okay.
Ours, the agenda is go over the Pledge of Allegiance, joint meeting, and so our agenda kind of matches yours. All those in favor? No, I would entertain a motion to accept that.
Motion.
I'll second. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Aye. Motion is carried 3-0.
okay, thank you.
And now. Ms. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. So Keith and I worked together on putting together the 4 memos that are in the joint agendas. So we're going to start with the pilot program discussion. And it was very helpful for me, being new, to kind of go through the history. I won't read it all. You can see it in your in the packet. We also talked between the 2 of us and put together sort of a broad list, and it's not all encompassing of the various services that are provided and performed by the PUC. And also talking about the collaboration behind the scenes between the city staff and the PUC staff, things like painting the holiday decorations and helping place rooftop units and those types of things. And then we talked a little bit about and brainstormed some options for pilot. And it was pointed out to me that I missed a very obvious option, which would be no change from what's going on today, in which case there's no payment at all. But we have 3 other options: the reestablishing the annual flat fee, forgiving the municipal water and electric fees, and looking at an annual payment based on a percentage of electric sales. And we did look at, Keith has great information on what other communities options are out there. And there was stuff in the file from before. So we've laid out the various things to talk about, and so now I will stop talking and let you guys discuss. So unless Keith, you wanted to add anything?
Not at this time.
All right, so I guess I view this meeting as a twofold one, to kind of cement the relationship that the city and the PUC have. But we're all serving the same people here, so. So part of it is kind of a get to know where everybody is standing on issues, and the second is try to resolve this, lack of pilot, I guess. What the other issues are, I don't know, we'll find out. So. Anybody like to add before we turn it back over? It's gonna be a little back and forth. I don't know exactly how to
I guess Mayor,
tackle the problem, but.
Mayor, if I could, I just want to refresh the council and maybe the commission here on what had transpired prior to the vote that was put on the ballot of eliminating the commission. And I was appointed by the council to have informal meetings, very informal, with the chair, Greg, and with the director and the city administrator and city finance officer, and we did that. And I believe we had some real good meetings that took place. It was open discussion and back and forth. And at one point, the discussion overall evolved around reinstating pilot on a monthly basis for a 10-month period, with the end result being hopefully there would be an agreement between the two entities on a fixed figure that was agreeable between the two. And that figure, and correct me if I'm wrong, was a $4,000 a month for a 10-month period beginning in October, and was to end in this July of 2021. And by that time, we were hopefully going to meet and come up with a solution. But that was the agreement that we had. I brought that to council at that time, and that was that I believe it was rejected, and that evolved around having that ballot question in place. But the point I want to make was, at that point, we were in agreement of $4,000 a month for at least a 10-month period, which for the city, that was a $40,000 payment in lieu of taxes. The payment that, if I'm not mistaken, that was given annually since 19, whatever it is, 80, 83, whatever year that was, it's always been $54,000. So I'm just want to refresh everybody's memory of where we were at on our discussions and what council had me do to work on. After the decision by council was to put that on ballot, I inquired if we should continue to meet, and I believe the word from the commission was not at this time. So maybe we should start that up again. Kind of my opinion here. It's been now since the election, we're going on our 6th month here. I think we should open this up again. And personally, I'd like to see us get back to a flat fee. And what would that be based on? Again, we need to meet and discuss that and come up with something to base it on, not just throwing out figures like we're done in the past. I think we were on our way, Mr. Hanson. I think we were coming up with ideas on what it would be based on. So that's where I leave it for right now, anyway.
So the history from my perspective, mine only, you guys feel free to jump in, but we halted the pilot payments because we felt we were in a situation where we were not at a financial position that we needed to be, particularly with days on hand, cash, and so forth, in different particular areas that we felt was important to have. How many days of cash on the electric side, how many on the water side, and that gets to be a very complicated financial kind of analysis and decision making. And the decision was made until we could get into that position. We couldn't be spending an optional $40,000 a year until we could get that resolved. We stopped making the payments post haste at that point. The decision to make the $4,000 payments for 10 months was an attempt by the commission and by our, this part of our conversations as we met together, Jules, and you remember exactly what went on there, was to give us, put us in a situation where we could take 10 months, we'll make the payments, and take that 10 months to really analyze very carefully what our financial position was. There was all kinds of options for how to handle the cash that we had on hand. Could we swap it? We were going through some changes in bookkeeping methodology and so forth at that time. So we said, here, let's just do this. Let's make the payment, but give us this 10 months to work together to find out, to discover and plan for a more permanent kind of relationship. The former mayor was fond of bringing up statutes and throwing numbers in our face and everything else. And I think it's important to bring up at this point that according to statute is the commission that has the power to decide about a payment in lieu of taxes or any other payments to the city. The statute specifically refers to our ability to do that, not the city's ability. And then basically it lays out a course of action where should we have a surplus, that would be an opportunity for us to come to the city and say, here's how we can share some of the revenue. The statute was really written very carefully in terms of keeping the council and the commission separate. The commission was supposed to run the utility, the electric and the water in our case, as a separate business whose goal was to protect and serve the citizens of the community that are ratepayers. It was never intended to be a de facto tax device to bring more money into the city. The city has all kinds of ways to bring cash into the city coffers. They can tax, they can have franchise fees, they can do whatever. The commission's money was supposed to be spent to protect that and ensure the financial reliability of this utility in the interest of its ratepayers. And then, Mr. Mayor, you always said we serve many of the same customers. Indeed, we do. But it is our responsibility to look after the voters as ratepayers and make sure we're doing our best to provide the best possible electric and water utilities and the services that support those utilities. Can't just have power up there without having a pile of people behind the scenes making all those things work. So we have to make very sure as we go forward that we're taking care of all of the business. And then in cases where we would have a surplus at the end of the year, we have to make a decision about how does that impact rates? How does that impact our reserves for the coming year? And if we have a surplus that we can share with the city, it would be certainly appropriate to sit with the city and have that conversation. Also could have, should that case arise, and I'm sure that it will, is how do we expect that surplus to be spent? Should it be just going into the general fund? Or should we say that we wanted those funds to be set aside for parks, for example, or we wanted to set aside for economic development, the addition additional territories to the city, things like the industrial park, housing developments, whatever they might be. We could say that, here, we can share this money, but we expect the city to handle it in this way. A lot of room for discussion on how that can happen. But that's kind of from, at least my perspective, and you can nod here if you're in agreement or not, because, we're three independent guys here. And fortunately, we've been able to come together as a commission and agree on almost everything. Not always, sometimes we don't agree. And that's the nature of the beast. We don't, it's like you guys. There are 5 of you there. You get 5 votes. You don't always agree. Mr. Reynolds today, for example. So that's where we are. And that's kind of the history from where we came to this. And I think this, we're right in the middle of an audit right now, if I'm not mistaken. And given the year that we've just come through with COVID and everything else, I think this is an important year to take a look at those financials, decide exactly where we're going to be at the end of this year, and try to make a good plan for the coming year, because we're coming off one like this country's never seen. Certainly we have never seen. So I think it's an important year for us as a commission, for you as well. And I think it's a good year to restart negotiations, if you like, restart, at least keep the communication between the city council and the Public Utilities Commission open and moving forward. I think that's critical. And I think, one of the things that my colleague Dan reminds us is when he got into this, he said one of his goals was to bring the public utilities of Princeton more open to the city and have a better perspective of the community and what we're doing and so forth. We've made some pains to do that, but I think it's important that we also show the community that the city council and the commission are more than willing and able to work together to move this community forward. A lot of projects on the table out there, and we are more than happy to work together with the city. And I would like the city as a community to recognize that that's our position. We want to work with you all year long, not just for a Thursday night at 4:30 on any particular May night. So my 2 cents. Back to you.
I just wanted to clarify something. So what you're telling us is when the commission made the decision to not continue with pilot payment in lieu of taxes, you're telling me that there was a discussion about budget at that time?
Oh, absolutely.
And that was the deciding factor of why you discontinued it?
It's in the tape. Very clearly, we had that discussion. The mayor jumped in and we asked him some questions and he asked us questions. And when we got no response, we went back to what we were discussing, and the issue was, are we going to have pilot or?
And it was because of that amount that was contributed to the city in lieu of taxes. Again, you're telling the council here that it was because of budgetary concerns at that time, and that $54,000 was going to be detrimental to the PUC budget.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I wasn't there, so.
I was there. I sat in on all the meetings and there was never a conversation about it until it was brought to your meeting to discontinue it.
Mr. Erickson, did we have a conversation about budgets in December and November, finally in January?
That was cut in with.
Of course, you had budget conversations, but never was it brought up that you needed to stop the payment to the city, or if that was even an option, because there was issues getting your cash on hand, which we had numerous discussions about different ways to get your cash on hand. And if I may ask, really quick, I see your hand up, Rick, but I just want to finish my thought here. At the end of the year, I asked, you guys stopped making payments, but yet you still didn't have one more day of cash on hand in the electric fund, even though you weren't paying it. And I don't know where your cash on hand is in your electric fund. I'm guessing it's probably still around the same amount. But then it was also brought to my attention that the reason you guys did that was because of the mayor, because the mayor had brought up that he was going to ask council to re-look at it, and we had a discussion to put it on our agenda to possibly ask for an increase. And all of a sudden, the next meeting you guys had, it was on your agenda and you wiped it out just like that. And then it was also brought to my attention by people that sat in on your meetings, the committee meetings, that the full intention was to stall until after the election. And if Brad made mayor, you were not going to reinstate it. But if we got a new mayor, then you would reinstate it. And that was made clear, that was what the whole purpose of stalling and not coming to an agreement prior to that. And until it got put on, we talked about putting it on the ballot, and then all of a sudden there was an agreement that you guys would start it up again. So I'm going to disagree with some of the things that you said, Greg. And that's my opinion from sitting in on all of your meetings and everything I heard and was part of discussions.
Rick,
I just want for clarification that I attended PUC meetings like 14 months prior to being appointed to this position. And I just want to Jenny's point, if I may call you Jenny, that this was done prior to me being a commissioner. Okay. So that sets a stage that it doesn't mean that I differ from my fellow commissioners. But that decision was made prior to me being a commissioner. I think that really needs to be established because it's not us three against you five. Time moves, okay? I really don't know that I need to say anything more than that. I just wanted to make that point clear.
I would like to say something. We weren't at those meetings. We've heard a lot about those meetings, now and in the past and in the newspaper and everywhere. At this point in time, I'm really not concerned about what happened in the past. I want to move forward. I don't care what was said. I don't care who said it. I don't care what rumors started with the newspaper. I don't care about any of that. I just think at this point, collaborating right now at this round table, talking with each other, I think this is 10 steps forward immediately. Just getting together, and I say we just move forward. Whatever was said and done in the past, not all of us were here. You weren't here. I wasn't here. Tom wasn't here. Michelle wasn't here. There were a lot of us that were not here. So let's just wipe the slate clean and move forward. It's the only way we're going to do this.
I agree.
Okay? I mean, I've never had no feeling, even from all the rumors running around. I mean, for the past several years, people's talking, ill about the PUC and things like that. It's a lot of damage control out there when people are negative. But when you explain to them what's going on and show them information, then they're a lot more understanding. Oh, I get it now. Okay, so these are all together. Yeah, okay, now I get it. So I should say move forward.
I think that's what we're here for.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, right now.
So my concern for a decade or so has been rates and tax rate. And for the people in Princeton, I'm just gonna say that public utilities and Princeton taxpayers are largely the same thing. I know that there's a few outside of city limits that are in your jurisdiction, but so every dollar you put into a pilot is going to affect rates. But if you don't, then we have to be concerned about rates. You know, if you're not, Keith, I think you said, I don't know, at a previous meeting while you were here, you said that out of the 5 closest utilities were somewhere in the middle rate wise. Is that correct? But all of those utilities pay taxes to whatever jurisdiction they're operating in. So if you're in the middle of that group, but you don't have to pay the property taxes, then that puts a concern on what your rates are. This is always the tension that we have. We'd like to have more money in our coffers to be able to do programs. We have to make choices. Rates, you held the line, you reduced them a little bit. I think you got them in line where they needed to be. But then you changed the equation as far as the rest of the taxpayers and ratepayers in Princeton. So I'm concerned to hear that, well, no, we still can't do the property taxes or the pilot program. So how does that fit into rates? I mean, I just got, just a sidebar. I got 2 pieces of mail this week from Princeton Public Utilities. One said they're on a budget plan in our house. We had a $384 credit at the end. So we paid them $384 more than the power and water we used. And on that same letter, it was, but your budget amount's going up by $20 a month. So are you raising rates? That's what I would think. And it's an account that's been active for 45 years. I mean, we're not a credit risk. So
You better pull that
that's
bill,
where
Keith.
I am on this discussion. You know, it's like if you want to compare yourself to the other utilities, then you have to compare yourself to the other utilities. If you've got an advantage, then let's talk about how that affects rates.
Can I just mention something real quick, just from a data perspective? So in the memo, one of the things that is mentioned was in a previous pilot negotiation between the council at that time and the commission was that the utility implemented a government rate for electric, water, and trash collection. Now, obviously, we don't collect trash anymore. At the time, they estimated that was saving the city about $12,000 per year. I actually went this afternoon. I finally went in and looked, and because of the municipal electric rate that this utility has, which is exclusively for the city of Princeton, it reduces the city of Princeton's utility bill for both electric and water by $17,000. So the only reason I mention that is there still are things that the utility and this commission are doing to help the city. So it's not that, in the purest sense of the word, it's not that pilot has gone away. It's only that the pilot, the cash transfer is what was suspended. So I just want to mention that there still are other components to that, which is why we were having the ongoing discussion, because it is a complicated process to make sure that we have a full accounting of everything. But I just want to put that out there so that we're all aware of that as well.
So just to be clear, you're not raising any rates.
Oh, to your point, I'll take that next. The budget plans are always an interesting thing, because what ends up happening is we under collect in the summer because of air conditioning load, and then we tend to over collect a little bit in the winter, because the idea of a budget plan is to give one consistent number. So I will go back and check, but it is not uncommon that you would have a positive balance because you're entering the phase in which we under collect on that. So, but based on the modeling that our utility billing software does, it's not a number we make up. They have an algorithm within the system, and it says based on the last 12 months, knowing where you're at, what do we expect to be 12 months from now? Just like on your mortgage, you know how you sometimes get things about property taxes and you know where you're at and if you're over or under. It's the same thing. So no, there hasn't been a rate increase. That has to do with the algorithm, and based on your loan shape is where those numbers come from. But I'd be happy to look at that in your specific case in detail and get back to you.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak? I can see where Tom is and every single customer could be confused by a 45-year-old account and you get a rebate, but it's raised higher. That's a red flag to everybody that goes and buys groceries and this. So I'm not aware of that as a commissioner of the PUC on why he got that notice. And why would he get that notice? Why would anybody get that notice?
Yeah, you would think that if he's got a rebate coming, they would reduce his monthly payments instead of
Well,
increasing.
not especially $20.
Before
I'm just
we
using
get
you
off
as
into
an
the weeds and
example.
go down this road, that wasn't the point of my question.
No,
My
I-
question was,
Increasing the rate.
are you increasing your rates? I don't care if I pay
No.
$20 a month more, and next April, I just don't have a utility bill for.
But Mr. Mayor, my point is that I'm looking at how many ratepayers do we have?
We have 2,700 electric accounts.
Times $20, and they're all looking at the same question that you are. Okay, that's not, you don't want to open that envelope.
The number of customers on a budget plan are significantly less.
My point, Keith, is that we can do better than that. If he's getting a rebate of $183 or a check back, as people do with Federated Co-op or whatever, that you get money back or you don't. But don't give me a check back and then say I'm raising your rate. You know, so that needs to be cleaned up internally. That's something I don't see your bill.
So but that's kind of beside the point. I know there must be maybe 100 budget accounts.
Yeah, do you remember?
If it's 100, that's would be max.
Yeah.
So I know that it's a unique situation, but it does give me the option, and the opportunity to question what's happening with rates. And my main concern is either what we're paying in property taxes and what the people in Princeton are paying for utility bills. You know, they're the same thing as far as I'm concerned. It's all a cost of doing business in the city, and that's where my concern is.
I think it's important to move past your bills. But there's an explanation for the algorithm that does that. And it's not the same as the federated code. It's not that kind of an operation. But there is an algorithm that takes a look at what you did last year and what you expect. We expect you to do next year. And we'll fix that. If you need it detail by detail, I'm sure there's somebody that can fix that for you.
Well,
I would-
and again, I just want to say, I don't particularly care because the accounting will work itself out. And I'm not going to pay an extra $300 over the course of years and years and years. It's just not going to work that way. But the question still is, why wouldn't I think that there's a rate increase? You know, that's just where I am.
Dan?
Go ahead.
Who's in charge?
Sure.
Yeah, if we could, but, okay to move past that part. I agree with Greg's opening statement, basically, and I also agree with Councilor Helene that we need to move forward. But I would like to say one little more history piece is when I came on as we kept getting questions about our cash reserve policy from the city council. Well, looking into it, we had zero cash reserve policy. So that's kind of where it all started. So as we started, so there was a lot of discussion about, well, how do we make a cash reserve policy? So we looked around and a lot of people, I mean, I think 180 days of cash reserve was kind of the standard answer that we found everywhere. That's what the Elk River, Talking Elk River, that's what they had. And just business in general, 180-day cash reserve policy. Pretty standard. So that's kind of where the whole succession started. Went from that, from that to setting how do we set a cash reserve policy and what numbers do we use? And Keith did a lot of the work on that, or he did all the work on that. And so that kind of went from there, and then we decided that if we adopted a 180-day policy, we would be out of compliance with the audit. So we really couldn't adopt a 180-day policy because then we'd be out of compliance, which would affect the bond rating, and which would also affects the city's bond rating. So we couldn't just go ahead and set that policy of 180 days without affecting, all of us, the entire city. So correct me if I'm wrong, but
That is
So-
concern, yeah.
so that was a concern. We didn't want to set this policy that other cities had, other public utilities had, and then here, ruin the bond ratings for the city. So I mean, there was a lot of discussion on this before this happened. But I would like to move forward. I mean, just to speak from my personal opinion, I'd like to move forward. I'd like to have some discussion. I think, there's a lot of room for some.
Okay, I have a question regarding what you were just talking about, Jim. So you just mentioned that your audit is happening now.
We have it scheduled for a week and a half.
Okay, sorry, good to see you.
Oh, yeah, we have it scheduled for a week and a half.
Okay, and that's fine, and it happens every year. And is it not the auditor's general practice to give you recommendations on what you should be doing? So how did you go from zero cash reserve and being audited every year?
No,
Because
that's
that's not the
zero.
normal.
Zero policy, not, we had cash reserve, we just had no policy on it. So how much cash is enough?
Okay,
And the previous mayor was saying we had millions and millions of dollars just sitting in a bank account. And I think if you looked at it without a policy and without explaining what this was all for, yeah, it did, to the average person who doesn't understand what monies are set aside for you.
This is in my interim when I was just being a citizen sitting in on meetings before I was appointed as commissioner. The funds then, I think, were like 78 or 88 days of cash. And I did my own study without, I've been in business all my life. That doesn't make me perfect, but I did my own study, and prior to even hearing of 180 days, that's the number that I came up with. Is that if you are a utility or a city function, you have to look for that cloudy day that a tornado comes through or whatever. How much cash is enough? I don't know, but as a business operation, I think you should have at least 180 days. So I think Jenny could maybe help with that, and Keith, you help me with my answer that I'm going to give here. I think that we were at like 88 days, and aren't we just currently at like 138 days?
Oh, 125.
125. Okay, so
You were at around 100 when I swapped spots with Jules. We're right around 100. Are you talking about the electric side or the water?
no, I'm talking about the electric, but before I was even born. I mean, I was just visiting, and I was taking my own notes and everything else and doing this and that and listening. I was doing my own perspective on if this was my company, we should do maybe this. So I think it was like around 88 or something in
That number, yeah. I remember
prior to
seeing-
me, I was just a visitor.
Yeah,
But it doesn't matter. I mean, but right now, if we're at 125, that's a fairly large increase. So if we need to get to 180 days yet, there's a ways to go yet. You know, that there's cash that needs to be in that reserve. If that's our policy to be 180,
It's not our policy because we would have been able to comply, but that's where we do want to get to that point.
right? So my point is, we're making headways to do that. Now, if that comes from the point of that we aren't paying out pilot, I don't know. But we're making our cash reserves. We are more solvent than we were 2 or 3 years ago. Which is a good position. Does it hurt somebody else in the transition? That's what we got to talk about.
Well, if I could ask, what have you done with the overabundance? You had like 500 and some days of cash on hand on the water side. Have you done anything with that, or is that still sitting there?
That's how we're funding our AMI conversion.
Which is,
Oh, we're switching our entire metering system from AMR, which is a drive-by radio system, to AMI, which is a network metering infrastructure, so that we can give a lot more data analytics in terms of consumptions. It increases the accuracy. We don't have that meter readers out anymore. We read it from the office. We actually can do disconnects remotely, which takes away some safety issues with staff being out in the field during tense situations and a lot of other things. So that's what we're using the water.
Didn't you have money to the side for that though?
That's, well, that was
Not
the
the
cash.
cash on hand money, but you actually had money to the side for that.
Well, that's where we're paying for it from cash. I mean, we have both the capital improvements fund in it and the cash fund, but that's where I'm taking it out at the moment. The CIF that we have is, we have in place because one of the water towers needs to be repainted in a few years. We've got money set aside for that. We're concerned about if the MDH or MDR or DNR comes up with new requirements on water treatment plant 1, so we want to be ready for that if it happens. And then with some of the expansion projects that we're talking about is why we have that in our capital improvements fund as well. But the AMI stuff I've been paying for out of the cash.
I'd like to make one note to your comment about rates. Looking forward, we have a lot of debt that's coming up that's going to be paid off, both from the Simple side. I believe like Rochester and Austin were possibly going to be out of the
Starting 2030. Correct.
2030. So, and then they're going to decommission Sherco. And with those things, a lot of debt's going to go away coming from the Simple side. So, I mean, it looks like we might have the lowest rates in the area coming, looking forward into the future. I think, to me, that's a pretty positive sign. Just looking, if you look at the financials coming down the pipeline, I mean, we're going to have some of the best rates around. So, just wanted to make a little note of that.
If I could ask one more question, I'm confused about something that's on page 2 of this pilot program. And it says franchise fee, and then it says PUC pays the same franchise fee as other utilities to support park and trail development. Can you explain to me what you mean by that?
Well, okay, so the franchise fee, which the city has implemented,
Yep.
is on all utilities.
Yep.
Okay. If you look
It's
at,
on the utility bill.
correct.
Mhm.
If you look at somebody like Delano, who says that they pay a 4% pilot, that includes the franchise fee. Those are included in calculations typically.
But this this is why I asked, because this came up in conversation with us as well, that you guys aren't paying us that franchise fee. You are collecting it for the city like you're collecting sewer funds.
But the standard accounting practice is to include that as funds being collected from ratepayers to the local city government. And so the franchise fee, and again, Delano includes it in theirs, in their calculation. And so,
But you guys aren't, it's not coming out of your money. It's coming from the ratepayers. It's $1.50 per resident
I understand.
to help us pay for parks and trails. You keep making it look like you guys are paying that $1.50 per customer and giving us that money.
It's coming from the ratepayers. Yeah.
But it's not coming from the PUC. You guys are merely collecting it for us like you are the sewer revenue.
I
It's no
understand, I know, I
different.
understand what you're saying,
It's-
but.
It's no different than North Branch is collecting I think it's a $15 franchise fee for a road tax.
And
For
my
a
point
road
is,
fund.
right, but my point is, again, I'm using Delano as an example. They count that as a pilot payment,
Well, they shouldn't because,
but I'm just saying, that's what others have done. So if what we're trying to do is figure out what others have done and view that as a best practice, that's part of the algorithm.
but if the city didn't ask for that $1.50 franchise fee for our parks, it wouldn't even be on the bill. So then it wouldn't be included in what you guys are saying that you are giving to the city. You're not giving
Well,
that.
okay.
Can I jump in?
I'm sorry, yes, go.
Yeah.
Please don't pick on Keith because I actually wrote that sentence. So the
No,
way I wrote it is probably incorrect. Then is that it should really read that, you know, what you stated. It should not be, it really shouldn't be in this particular, it should be worded differently that just like we have utility billing that the city, the PUC is doing the billing on our behalf, it should say, should have been worded differently. It should have said that they're collecting the franchise fee. for
That's
us.
fine. I understand that you wrote it, but it has been confusing for
Okay.
a while.
I think, a good point too is all the monies comes from the ratepayers, all the monies. So it doesn't matter whether you call it a franchise fee or a pilot. In my opinion, the franchise fee is more transparent. When I look at my bill, I know that that money is going to the city. If the pilot is buried or hidden or less transparent, whatever you want to call it, in your rates. So, but it's all coming from the same people. It's coming from the ratepayers. It's not whether their bill says their rate per kilowatt or whether it says franchise fee. It's the same people are paying that same money. So it's not. I don't see what it's potato. They're all paying.
Yeah, it's not how it's worded.
Yeah.
Jenny, I agree with you. Yes, it's not the PUC paying it. It's collected from, we collect it from the ratepayers and just pass it through. My only point was just that is money coming from the ratepayers. And so it's typically, what I've seen is that's included in a pilot calculation.
We can move on.
So,
Hey,
I-
and,
do we,
this is,
go ahead, I'm sorry, go for it.
I was just gonna say, Mr. Hanson said
Sure.
the city has different ways to get money. One, levies, main. Other ways you mentioned it, was the franchise fee. It has nothing to do with PUC. The utilities has nothing to do with that. That was a city matter to have a franchise fee. So I agree with Jenny, that's
Yeah.
nothing to do with, you can't say we pay a pilot, that's a part of your pilot fee. No, that's the city council implemented that lawfully and legally to obtain $1.50 per electric meter.
Actually, I think what he said was, in Delano, when they say they're paying a pilot, they include that.
Well,
They're not doing that here.
We're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
No,
here.
that's.
And then,
We've got a lot of discussion on how we got to here, and if we're moving on, we need to come up with some ideas on how to do that.
you know, I remember sitting in the meeting, Greg, and Keith, and one of the comments made repeatedly or off and on was pilot is not gone away. It's just the funding for it. It's still there. We still have, it's still there. So that always gave me some encouragement to continue to talk. And we're doing that now again, which is great. My suggestion is we continue those talks and have a representative from council. You
That's
see,
not what we're doing today.
no, well,
But we're doing this.
I don't
We're not
think,
gonna,
I
we're
don't
not
think
gonna
we're
have one
gonna,
of these, they're not gonna.
I
have
don't
one
think all of a sudden
Probably right.
PUC is gonna say you can have $400,000 here or whatever, you know, but I mean, we can go on all night with this. I think we need to have some meetings again to get this thing, get the ball rolling. That's where
So are
we
you,
can talk here all
We
night.
can talk about what options we like at least, and then they can look into it.
I gave my option. I think a flat fee.
I like a flat fee.
Are you anticipating that until you reach that 180 days of cash reserve, you probably wouldn't be looking at any dollar amount funding for the pilot?
If I may. I think at this point, we are in a position where we want to get our ducks in a row and begin having discussions with the city council. City council needs to understand where we're coming from a little bit. Dan pointed out, the policy was the issue. And since we put this policy in place, we had to make sure that we were going forward to hit something. As we get new accounting information, that's going to fuel a lot of this discussion going forward. And I think it would just be prudent for us to take a look at this coming audit, say, okay, here's where we are, guys. This is where we are today. This is what like we're going to be in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. Because usually at the beginning of the coming year, we announce to our ratepayers, our customers, what the rates are going to be for the coming year and what they're going to include. And so I think the timing is perfect for us to begin having discussions.
How are you gonna afford it if you started paying it?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
How are you gonna afford the $40,000 if you started paying that again, if you guys can't afford to do that now? That's my first question. My second question is, could you remind me what month you stopped making payments?
No, I can't. Did we make a February payment last year?
I think so. I think
Oh,
it's-
I had that figured.
It was like it's summer, July, August.
Oh,
Late summer, early.
I thought it was March.
I think the city received 3 payments,
Okay.
January,
Yeah.
February, March.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
so it's been 1 year and you're about 28 days farther than you were a year ago. So if that's the case, if you need 180 minus 128, that means we have 52 days left to go. And if you're only averaging 28 a year, that's 2 years.
that's not necessarily a fair analogy because each year is different on what happens, if storm happens and this change and that change. What I would recommend is let's look at the agenda. I think we've spent time on this, but I would like to move to, all due respect, Jen, all due respect. Let's try to get as much accomplished on this agenda that we can. And, we can only talk about so much and how you do business, how we do business, and that's all for the people. But can we move on to the next subject matter?
Well, Mayor, if we don't have a plan in place here, it's gonna die. When are we gonna meet again on this?
Why
matter?
why did we? Bring that up?
We need to have a plan in place to continue these talks. Otherwise, we'll see you next year and we'll see how things are. It'll be the same situation.
With all due respect, I'm not suggesting that to kick the can down the road. That's not. my
Well, you wanna move
personality.
on to the agenda, we haven't finalized
I
it
think,
here.
I think he means come up with a plan with this pilot program. Is that what you were
No,
thinking?
you want
No,
We must
I-
go
I
on. I
just-
think we should have.
Right
we had
now,
Before was a committee to work on this.
What do we have to do to start that? Like a
What do we have to do?
motion
Yeah.
So we
somewhere?
can appoint somebody and
I
you
think we
appoint
were,
somebody.
we were agreeing, but,
Yeah,
let's
let's-
appoint a committee and move forward because
I-
we're not gonna discuss, be able to figure it out with this many people in a room.
Yeah, I would,
I'm okay with formulating the committee to move this forward.
yeah, and
on my sheet, we just hit item number 1. So I would like to move to the 5-member commission so we accomplish something instead of stagnate at 1.
Well, we gotta do this first, the pilot.
Well, we discussed it though.
Yeah, but we wanna make a decision as a council, whether we should formulate a committee to meet with you guys, to further have discussion on the pilot, so it's not all of us, just a few,
Well, we have, in the past, we had a couple people from the city, maybe a couple of you guys. And at least come up with a timeline on when, I understand that you're trying to get to 180 days of cash on hand. That's a big number of dollars, right? Electric company, I can imagine it's a huge number of dollars. So we need to know that you're making progress on that because, we still have a hole in our budget from what we were expecting to get and what we are getting. I guess we're not expecting to get the pilot anymore because it has stopped. But if we have regular communication between a member of the commission, one of you three, a member of somebody up here, Keith, Michelle, at least we'll be informed, and that's going to be important for us to continue making progress on any of this stuff. So if we're amenable to that, let us know, talk, whatever, figure out what the schedule is for this joint meeting of a committee occasionally is. And then let's move on. Because there's nothing else we're gonna do yet.
Well, not tonight, this
No,
way, maybe if for council, if it's a consensus, our next meeting, we can think about who we would like to be on that committee. And we could discuss that.
Sure.
And then you could do the same.
Yeah, I mean, we can only have one, just because otherwise we have a quorum.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's probably Greg.
Okay.
was
That'll
already
feed
in that
into what
discussion,
you were
and
talking.
And I suggest that we only set one.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then,
can we pick that for them this evening? The one we're gonna send?
Well,
Okay.
if you
Can't we,
wanna, I would like to
can't we
again
continue what's
recommend-
already been set up? We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
I think so.
They know where it was at and where they were at. prior to
I'd
the
say
you
it'll
said
either
it.
be Jules or myself, since both of us are the most.
I am
Jewel, are
coming into
you
this
willing
with
to
not a
do that?
whole lot.
So,
So I'm
Right.
fine with. Greg
I
Jules and
mean, I just want.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Yeah,
It's just another thing.
you can carry the torch for us.
Ongoing discussion and timelines, and that sort of thing. See if we can
Yeah.
resolve this.
Just tough. Okay,
Yeah, what?
yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna point you out there.
I think this is a good discussion. Let's move on with the meetings.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking
That's
about
all I
our-
was asking for.
our meet-
That's all I was asking.
Yeah. hockey meetings. What do you call it? Yeah.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
Subcommittee, but we just kind of,
The
yeah.
working
It's kind of an
group,
ad hoc, it was just temporary. Yeah, either way.
the working group.
All right.
That'll work.
Yeah.
So
We're gonna
we-
work
I'll let
really
Michelle.
Well, Michelle, you and I are the work.
Oh,
Yeah.
here's
There's the work.
You get the paycheck too.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
we're
we'll
set up.
point Joel.
Can we
Yes.
leave it to the two of you to find a date that works and?
Yes, we will coordinate schedules with between the four of us in a manner that's convenient and isn't at 10 a.m. in the morning.
So that we check the meeting.
That sounds.
And not during the meetings either, okay?
Yes, we understand that.
Okay.
Yes, we will not interfere with baseball.
Any more final thoughts on
Can't.
4.1 that we can possibly make progress on?
I think it was good discussion. I appreciate your comments and the participation.
Yeah.
Yes, really.
My anxiousness to keep moving forward is I have to leave in 30 minutes.
You know,
Okay.
And all of this is so important to me. It's so important to me, but I have to represent 53 people in Wyoming. So
Okay, let's move on.
All right, and I would just say that the memo that we got for different options, let's just keep considering all of those. All right, 4.2, 5-member commission.
yes,
I'm in the position where it doesn't matter to me if there's 3 of you or 5 of you. And that's just me. It probably is more beneficial for you guys to discuss because you can't have a conversation with each other without having a meeting.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if we're not all in agreement because we're not going to get special legislation passed if we're not agreeing on it to begin with. So,
Yeah.
let's have it from you guys on this first.
I voted yes.
Yeah.
I'm a yes for it. I mean, it's, if everything was 3-person, there would be no collusion and background. I don't think we would ever had some things that went on in the last election, if it was only 3 people up there too, but I think to get things done in a timely manner, the 5-person makes sense to me, so, I'm for
Well,
it.
just like having a subcommittee, you guys can't. have
No,
two
they can't have
people
two
do
people.
that
No,
because
no, I know,
that
it's
means-
for the speed of business, it's really slow. I mean, we have to have long meetings because that's the only place to discuss anything.
Right.
So,
And we may look like idiots because I don't know what Dan's thinking about and well, Greg, you speak for yourself.
so,
But, you know, it just, 5, after living this for a while and the frustration of not being able to communicate, communication is my pet word. And not being able to do that without breaking a rule is impossible. So
is there
I'm
is there anybody against it?
The,
for what?
it's frustrating, to not be able to just call you guys and discuss something other than long-range ballistics or something, but, on the other hand, because we are a 3-member commission, we keep our business discussions at our meetings. So the utility business is at meetings, it's transparent, it's all there for the public to see. It's 5, then you've got me going to Dan or George or somebody else, let's do this, when we get to the meeting, let's plan this. And so there's this undercurrent that's going on, or potentially going on, that the public doesn't get a chance to see. So we're plotting or planning, whichever word you prefer to use, outside of the public arena. And the 3-member commission was originally put in place something like 100+ years ago. And although I'm sure it's been frustrating for commission members from the beginning, it's also been transparent from the beginning. And it's been out there in front of the whole community to see, whether they attended or they Zoomed it, they could see what was going on with us. And I like the idea of that transparency. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm one guy in the middle of this group. And what we do at a commission meeting is we pass motions, just like you do, and the majority wins. So, hey, if I lose this one, I lose. I still support whether it's a 3-person commission or a 5-person commission. When the commission decides, that's what we all get behind. And we have done that, even though we've had differences of opinion. We've supported what the commission decided at the end of the day. And I think that's valuable. So the 2 values that I think are important is this sense of cohesiveness on the board and the transparency that it provides the community. To Tom's point that whether we can get this passed any kind of legislation this year, I think you'd have to be smoking some pretty strong stuff. It's just not going to happen.
But if it's something that we agree that we want to do, we have to start something. You know, so whether we agree to say, let's go for it, and it doesn't happen this year, it doesn't mean it won't be in place next year.
Well, if everybody agrees, and Jack, I believe, also talked to Sandra Erickson, and she said she was in favor of it and would help push it through. I think that's the main.
Well, she would have to probably write the list.
Yeah, she had to
She
carry the
would.
bill.
She
Yeah.
would, but she agreed to do that. She would do that for us. So, if I could just give my thought, if you're done, correct?
I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. My thought is that the more people you have, the more experience you have, the more ideas you have, the more, collaborating you could have during meetings and things like that. The whole about like talking, whatever, I don't understand where that concern came from. City council currently has 5 members. The airport advisory board has 5 members. The economic development authority has 7. Our fire advisory has 7. Our park and rec advisory board has 7. Planning commission has 5. Public utilities has 3. Housing and development has 5. I mean, there's a reason why more people are added to these boards because of, like I said, knowledge, education, experience, ideas. I think more people can bring that to the table. One of the frustrations that I had when I sat as the liaison board was feeling like some decisions were being made based on emotions. The more people you add, I think the less there's that
Emotion.
chance of that happening. So that's my opinion.
I agree. I do also know that when 3-member commissions were established over 100 years ago, the communities were much smaller. So the voice of the people was, in ratio much less. I talked to a few cities about this over the course of the last couple of months, and they had 3-member commissions, and then they went to 5. And there's been pros and cons, they're getting adjusted. Some of these communities have just recently passed legislation on this within the past year or two. And so they're getting readjusted to this new, but they're seeming to like it. They're seeming to like the more minds at the round table, the more experience, better educated for everybody around, sitting at the table. I support a 5-member.
I want to clarify, I support the 5-member with one clarification, that there's only one city council member on the 5. Because otherwise you can turn it into a political, financial.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, we don't have any of our commissions with more than one council member to lead.
No, and I think one would be good because that one person could then have the city's interest in mind as well and could maybe throw out, well, here's how I think it would affect the city and things like that.
I think if you got too many, there could be.
No, I think one would be
Oh, hey,
perfect.
well, we don't need this money, let's,
Yep.
and then the ratepayers 5 years down the
Yep.
road are like, oh, we need a new water tower?
Yep.
Okay, now rates are going up.
I would agree. with
Well,
that.
would it have to be a council member or could it be a city
I just,
staff?
it doesn't have to be any
No.
council members,
You
but
know,
I just
okay.
would like it no more than one.
And I
I think
agree
that's
with you
expensive.
wholeheartedly, Dan.
Oh,
I think that's.
Elk River has to. There's a lot of cities. that
Also, maybe it's
have
just you
to.
can't have a majority.
Right, you just can't have a majority.
Okay.
Elk River has the mayor and a city council member
Oh.
on their
okay.
5-commission board.
And with us being in a unique position where we do have some ratepayers outside the city limits, this would allow, it would be nice to have some representation outside the city, but this would make it more proportional,
Yeah.
where you'd have, most of the people in the city limits and have, and allow for representation from outside the city also.
Which they have.
Yes,
Well, does Elk
but it'd be
River-
more proportional with the 5,
Sure.
because it's a small
Yeah.
number of people outside the city that should be represented.
The number 5 is important, but I agree with Dan wholeheartedly that it should only be one council member. Otherwise, the council can set its own stage by appointing us and then taking 2 out of that. So one council member limitation is almost mandatory in my eyes.
I think we would all agree to that.
You got 4 people to hammer that out. I'm fine with that. One city council person there is
Mhm.
more than, we
Yeah, more
don't
than
have one of those, then we don't have one.
Yeah.
Jack, you have something to say in this?
I'm not gonna comment on a position on whether we should or shouldn't go to 5-person. To kind of segue off of your timing thing. And I did speak with some, and whatever the consensus of the body is, she will hear it. And that was her comment to me.
Mhm.
She didn't promise or guarantee. anything.
Yeah.
But your comment, Mr. Mayor, that the legislative session is nearly over.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're gonna look at it this year.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
just
at least
wanted to
get
pick your timing. It probably wouldn't be till next year.
Okay.
That'd be my guess. I don't know that.
Okay, can we throw this on that 4-person board and hammer out some details, what you want to see, and
Sure.
then we'll move to approve in a subsequent meeting for each of us then.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to need to be a decision of PUC. So put it as an agenda item on our next meeting. We'll have a vote. It'll come up and then we'll match your vote or something will happen. And then we'll decide how that proceeds from here.
I think what we need to do is come up with an idea that we can both agree on without any changes, kind of like Senate bill and a House bill. Be better vote on exactly the same thing and then to send it off to get it done.
Yeah, solid consensus here will make it smoother at the legislature.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you have our support with whatever you decide.
I think that we're probably 80% saying 5 is just fine.
Mhm.
I didn't poll us. I
Well,
don't
we can,
know, but
who wants a 5-person board with a limit of 1 council member?
I'm okay.
A maximum. Whatever.
Hammer out the details. We'll approve it at a council meeting after you figure it
No,
out.
first you have to put it on your agenda and let your commission vote first.
Yeah,
As far as
Like,
collaboration,
consensus.
nobody listens to me.
Hey, I just heard you. I just heard you say that.
Greg said, as far as collaboration, nobody listens to me. Oh,
All right, we got,
See,
out of the next things on our agenda, we have to get this credit card convenience fee, because that's kind of important business, so let's get after that one. And if we run out of time, then we run out of time.
I guess and maybe this is Keith's introduction, but I just put together some information about the credit card fee that they're currently charging. And that we do charge a convenience fee. Unfortunately, we still haven't heard back from the credit card company to give you an exact number, but I think the maximum is 3% per transaction. So for people that are getting building permits or renting one of the facilities through our online service or whatever, there's going to be a percentage of their transaction that they will pay as a service charge, and that goes directly to the company. So we are passing that on to our residents. And so, and or I should say the PUC, as noted earlier, they do the sewer billing on our behalf. And so we do have some skin in the game, because if someone's paying with a credit card, they're also paying our portion of the bill, that's ours, so.
So I have a question. It says credit card fees, or, does that include debit cards as well?
Dan, you and I were talking about
I
that.
can't answer that
Right.
question.
Well, I would like to keep it to a convenience fee word,
Mhm.
but because you have debit, credit, anything besides cash or check
So
is
debit card.
costing money to process that. Now, we talked about, there is a cost to processing cash and checks too. We talked about that, but yeah, it's debit cards. You cannot charge a convenience fee legally, is what I was told.
Yeah.
But you can charge a convenience fee on credit cards. Some businesses will not accept debit cards because they don't have that priced into their goods or services. So yeah, the numbers are reflective of a few different areas of charges.
Oh, do you have some? Do you have
We
stuff like
have
that?
it listed as credit card because if you're familiar, when you go to a store, you usually choose if you want it to be credit or debit, regardless of the card you're using. And so that's kind of how it works through our system.
I didn't know you were still here.
But generally, so we do accept debit cards, but it's through the credit card processing. So they are charged the fee regardless.
And
From what I-
PUC
from what
wants
I
to have the convenience fee continue.
Well, here's what so less and less people are using checks. So they introduced the option of convenience of using a credit card to help promote, people paying their bills on time, which it was a good decision at the time, and it's worked, and more people paid. But as more and more people go away from using checks, that number is that cost is on a scale like this, and now, I don't want to get in an argument about what that cost is, but it's increasing, And so that's, we're talking about ways to save money, to get to within our 180 days or keep rates low. We're always looking at places to save money, and that's just one of the things that caught our eye. Like, well,
It shows up as a budget. Shows up as a budget item. We're spending this much money to credit card processing, whether it's 16,000 or 18,000 or 20,000. How you figure out all those charges that are assessed against processing payments. What we don't currently have a good handle on is what does it cost us as an office to process checks and cash payments and ACH checks and debit cards, and if they're different than credit cards. So there's cost associated with accepting any kind of payment. And so
Which is something that we discussed at City Hall also when we were looking at the fees, when I was talking to the people who generally, Shauna and Lou, is that how much is it worth it for us to have them pay for these services like renting things online that, take out of just the daily other things that they're doing. And what's that price? So I agree, like that's something we're trying to figure out too, is what's the value in charging that fee? Would it be worth it for us? Also, long term, if more people are using always online registrations with their credit cards, is that a value to us? Or isn't it? So I know that's something we talked about.
So,
interestingly enough, Keith was in contact with Connexus, who decided to charge a convenience fee and are now talking about dropping it
Yeah.
because it's too expensive. People start switching back to cash and checks. Now they got to process the checks in the office and mail them out and and it's. I've been through this with a couple other companies and it's almost a wash.
Yeah.
So, we're still in that process of examining our costs very carefully, but recognizing that this is a big item. I mean, just use a round number, $20,000 is not exactly chump change to us anyway, that we can just ignore and assume that it'll be covered by something. And so we're in the middle of that process. And it's going to impact you because it's going to impact, if it's, let's say it's 3%, because that's a number that everybody likes to follow. Wow, that means that 3% of your sewer bill is going to be paid by the ratepayers as well.
Quick question, in the memo, it says that you're currently absorbing the credit card fee, which is $2 per transaction. Is it a flat amount?
Yes.
$2?
It is $2 per transaction.
That's a lot. Like, have you guys shopped around for different credit card merchants?
Actually, I found it to be way on the cheap end.
Well, what is the average credit card charge? Is it say $200? That's 10%.
No,
Sorry.
$200.
It's 1%.
That's 1%.
Sorry, it's 1%.
Yeah,
3% of a $200 bill is $6. So
Right.
it's $2 and it's cheaper. But
They're anywhere usually ranging from 1 to 5%.
Yeah.
From what I've done.
yeah. And what I heard from Connexus is they shopped around this year and they agreed, and they have a higher volume, so I would think they would get an even better discount. They're still north of $2 per transaction.
Yeah, no, our municipal liquor store over the past 20 years, I mean, Nancy has periodically shopped, throughout the years.
Tracy, you got something for us?
Yeah, so when I worked for the state, they offered, basically to offset the cost of a credit card fee to encourage people to doing ACH transfers, essentially direct transfers from their bank. They offered a discount or some kind of credit back. Now, it doesn't have to be even 1%. It was, like 0.05%. Nothing big, but just the idea that you're giving a credit back on your statement for paying via ACH incentivized a lot of people. So that's something that you can also consider. It wouldn't be a huge cost to the budget.
It would save a lot of money and people running to the bank and
Right.
stamping checks and all that junk.
What every Connexus does,
Yeah.
I get Connexus energy and that's how I do. If I have the option, I'll choose the cheaper one, but I then have to go find my checkbook. Because I don't carry my routing number.
Sorry, I was listening
Yeah, I-
online. You're like,
Well,
I guess I-
Going back.
I can,
I would make a motion to concur with the PUC on whatever they decide on their credit card.
Okay, that's what I was just gonna ask. I just want to know what you guys think.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, action item, can't really do that, but we'll do that. We'll take care of it next week.
Okay.
But that's
make a note.
what I will,
We support.
I will support that.
I'll add it to
Yeah,
the,
and I think it could be done very, very simply, so it's not so painful. You know, the convenience fee, you've got the trail fee, you've got this fee, it's all listed, and we've made a generic billing to separate Princeton from the utilities and all of that, so it's very easy to read. And if you go down and you look and you have a choice, you can pay it later and pay more, or you can pay it now and pay less. But now, if you have that still intact, and if you pay cash, it's even less. So you build it into the process of what's happening. And if you look at it, you're really giving them a cash discount or a non-factor charge payment. So, and even if we could justify the fact and gave them $1 off instead of using 3% or 3.5%, you actually gave them $1 off for paying cash.
For ACH.
Yeah,
Well, that's the whole point, is
Yeah.
educate the public that the ACH is available and you don't have to do nothing. You know, people, they just do the routine thing. So educate them that by doing this and using this form of payment is actually saving you this $22,000 a year, which saves all of you a rate increase on what we're sending the bill on.
So the convenience fee is only gonna be charged to those who run their credit cards, not going on the bill.
No, it'd go on the bill, in my opinion, it would go on the bill, but if you pay cash, you're gonna pay this amount.
I don't know, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't-
We got a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. We got some work to figure out.
There's a dozen ways to skin this cat.
It's not gonna happen, it's not gonna happen, probably this year, so.
if I could just interject real quick, Jenny, the county, the minimum convenience fee for transactions under, I think it was $75 was $1.95. So the $2 is not, and then after that, it was a percentage. So if they're only charging $2 for regardless of how big the bill is, that's, I would say, is a very reasonable average cost.
I think it was you that said when people were presented the convenience fee, they magically found their checkbook.
Oh, I had plenty of people run out to their cars, or they turn around and look at me and they say, where's the nearest ATM? It's
Yeah.
like,
So I wouldn't have to pay it every month on my bill, if I pay cash every month.
so
Or just had it ACH out of your checking account, and there's nothing.
that's how I pay my utility bill.
That's the nice thing, but look, get back to the budget plan, it's just an automatic thing, we don't
Yep.
do anything, we just, whatever that amount is, it just goes,
Just on my checkbook.
comes out of the checkbook every, same day, every month, so. All right, we got one more thing on the agenda, but we're running out of time, do you want to tackle any of that, introduce it, or you just want to adjourn?
I need to leave, and I appreciate all of you very much. I truly appreciate my former commissioners and Keith. This has been a great experience for me, and I appreciate all of you guys very much. This is so much of a different climate than it has been. So thank you, and God bless all of you, but I have to leave, I'm sorry.
Pleasure to meet you.
All right, so you lost the quorum.
Mayor.
No, we still have a quorum.
No, we-
We're not voting on anything anyway.
No, No, we have a quorum, one too, is a quorum.
Oh, that's right, you do.
That's the issue.
All right, you want to go after promoting Princeton growth tonight?
I mean, I
It's
would,
getting to be 6 o'clock.
I wouldn't mind talking a couple minutes on it.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes. We can
You
work
know,
this.
even if it's just to say, I mean, that, I'm all about, you know, Princeton and its growth, so, I mean, I think, you know, I look at Princeton as more than just the city of Princeton, I look at Princeton as everybody with a Princeton address. And, you know, whether it's, you know, most people don't say, they live in Baldwin Township, when you ask them where they live, they'll say that if they're Princeton Township or Baldwin, if they have a Princeton address, they're from Princeton. You know, what we, you know, I would like to, you know, keep in mind to look to projects to work together to grow things like this industrial park and work together, expanding the territory, and however that can work for the both of us. I mean, that's the types of things that I would like to work together on. That's my 2 cents.
I think the big things like that are important. I think that what I think of as smaller things that, you know, helping string lights in the park when we're doing special things, and, you know, the other deals that we do. But I really view the Princeton Public Utilities as a resource for the city. When you go out to talk about expanding in the industrial park, for example, you can say, we've got people that can help you do that. We have people that can help you plan for the machinery you're going to have on site. Now, if you need 3-phase, we got that. If you need single phase, we got it. You need 480 volts, we've got that. We've got the people that you can talk to about that. We can be a resource for the city as it reaches out, tries to grow. And I think growth is important. You grow or you die. And I think, you know, it'd be great if more of our kids that graduate from Princeton High School had opportunities to stay here and work and make a decent living. And if we're not growing, we don't do that. Now, I'm a guy that had 8 kids and none of them live here, but I think it would have been cool if they could have found, you know, one that's a professor and one that's a building supervisor. And there's all kinds of things that they're doing out there. But some of those opportunities could be here, and the growth of this community is important to try to push that forward. As I said, I think Princeton Public Utilities, not this commission, the utilities are a tremendous resource for you to count on, to call on this. When you're talking to people about come to Princeton, we've got people you can talk to. You know, whether they want to talk to Keith or they want to talk to Jerry, maybe they want to talk to Scott. What's the water going to be like? How does that work? We've got resources that can be a plus for you to talk about. And by the same token, we have an opportunity to talk to people when they come to us and say, you know what? We've got people at the city that really know how to make this work. Go talk to them. Whether it's Stephanie or any of you, there are people there to be a help. So, you know, we'd like to discuss specific projects with you whenever you have one. And if we have one, we're going to come see you. And I think that's our position as a board. I think everybody on the board and DQ would agree with me on that without taking a vote.
There's an economic development authority. We hear about municipal utilities being an asset. And I guess it's been, you know, greatly underutilized if that's the case, because we were never having those discussions before about, well, what can we use a municipal utility to entice business to land in Princeton as opposed to St. Cloud or Cambridge. So that's good to hear. And if you're on board with that, we'll start promoting that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Maybe want to bring this back full circle back to 4.1. I would really like to see in that discussion as part of that pilot discussion that some of that monies be dedicated to the economic development in some way, some form. If possible, that could be, you know, rather than just going to a general fund with more dedication. I know the city of Elk River, pointed out to me that they use it just for street improvement, or they have a dedicated certain, projects or whatever, so. Anyhow, to help promote growth, if we could use some of that, it's dedicated to help promote growth. That would be one way that we can collaborate.
Without tying our hands about how we use our revenue, I guess I'm okay with that, but it's not a big enough number that we're not going to be able to stick it in an economic development forum somewhere. But once it goes from you to us, I just want to say, you don't get to say that that was a bad idea that you spent that money.
Yeah, we're pretty frugal around here.
Well, and economic development is kind of, honestly, sometimes it's just a crapshoot and we don't win every time. So
Well, and I think
we don't want to be second guessed on, I'm fine with the idea. Just don't want to be second guessed on, well, this is this economic development project that we're using. The money that you said you'd like us to use it, we would hate to hear you say you shouldn't have done that.
Well, just for like an example, we had a meeting where someone asked, just this our study session with the developer, that, we can't really do things like waive whack and sack fees just for random people that come in and ask, but maybe if there was a fund where a business that was going to help the community out a lot could draw from that for specifically to use for that. So it's not a random, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but
You can talk about engineering fees, or you could talk about flat fees or surveying or any of those things that are development related, but maybe those are good because somebody's already in the process at that point. I'm okay with that, as long as it's not exclusively that, and once it transfers from your fund to our fund, that we don't get second guessed if we're following the agreed upon parameters.
Well, and
I mean, there would be, obviously a lot of discussion, but it was just, and I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
I agree with what Tom said, because once it comes to us, we are all in the mind that we want the city to grow, which is why we decided to purchase that land to turn it into a, industrial development, and why we're pushing 21st through, and all of these things, we are growth minded, and that's what we're all have decided that is important to us. So I don't think that would be an issue at all. I don't think anybody sitting on the city council would not want growth. I think it's all of our goal to continue to keep growing. So I don't think there's a question there, but to say that we have to dedicate it to one particular thing, I don't think is feasible.
But if it's general enough economic development, there's lots of places.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole.
But maybe not
You
all.
wanna-
I mean, that's something that the committee can discuss.
Yeah.
I don't want to start that.
Yeah, we can take over their job.
I just,
I look at it as pilot payment in taxes.
Yeah.
When property owners pay their taxes to the city, they don't designate what they want to go to parks or to development, whatever. It goes into the general fund so that we
They trust us to
make those decisions. That's my
yes.
payment in lieu of tax.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah.
We all want to grow. Like, that's our goal. That's where we're going.
We haven't got to the point where we can't control growth, so we haven't talked about that.
It's not really under control.
It kind of controls us right now.
We're trying hard.
Yeah, it controls us.
So anyway,
we're situated in the way of growth. I mean, we're not gonna, we're in the way of, being on the 169 corridor. It's at some point, it's gonna be, just like
The problem is, in city limits, there's no growth.
right.
So we gotta do the westward movement.
Well,
just a
So,
little bit.
northwest.
but some of the things that we can do to help promote, we were talking at that meeting, and or maybe we were talking about that, is, where we put how we put the water in for future developments that promote the expansion of the city limits, or things like that, that we can work together on. If it's done thoughtfully and along with the comprehensive plan, that the city has, and that's where we can, I think, do a lot of working together to promote growth.
Yeah.
I think we should continue thinking about this and supporting, maybe even having a conversation again in the future, bringing more ideas to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be, I don't know if you've never seen the comprehensive plan. So maybe we could start right there is having a comprehensive plan, maybe a presentation at the PUC meeting, just so all the commissioners and Keith can just kind of see, well, this is kind of the picture of what these land uses we're looking at.
Stephanie, when's our last comprehensive plan done?
2018, and it was actually just approved, I believe, in 19. So
Yeah.
it was recent.
I could remember if it was
And the land use-
2018 or 2017 or.
We just completed the land use update last year in 2020. So.
Time this year. Well, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We got a motion and a second on our side. Do you want to?
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. All those in
All in
favor?
favor, say aye.
Aye. Motions are carried.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
gentlemen, for
guys.
being here tonight.
Kind of funny, I grabbed the pen before, ran out of